The bass thumped through the floorboards, vibrating up my legs as I balanced the tray of drinks. 3 whiskeys neat, 2 vodka sodas, and something blue in a martini glass that cost more than I'd make in tips tonight. The air was thick, cologne, perfume, cigarette smoke, and desperation, all mingling into the distinct scent of Obsidian, the most exclusive nightclub in the city. Table 7. Don't spill. Marco barked as he passed, his shoulder brushing mine roughly. I steadied the tray against my hip, ignoring the ache in my feet from the mandatory 6-inch heels we cocktail waitresses had to wear. 6 hours into my shift, and I still had 2 more to go. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The hospital again. I couldn't answer now. Mom would understand. She always understood, even when she shouldn't have to. I wove between tables, past men in tailored suits who never looked at my face, and women draped in diamonds who never saw me at all. Obsidian's clientele lived in a different world than mine, one where medical bills didn't pile up on kitchen tables, and where mothers didn't need experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. "Your drinks, gentlemen," I said, setting each glass down carefully on the black marble tabletop. The men at table 7 were regulars, middle-aged with heavy watches and heavier wallets. They tipped well when they were winning at the casino upstairs, poorly when they weren't. "Thank you, doll," one of them said, sliding a 50 across the table without looking up from his phone. "Keep the change." I slipped the bill into my apron pocket, murmuring thanks to a man who'd already forgotten I existed. As I turned to leave, the air in the club shifted. I felt it before I saw anything. A collective intake of breath, conversations dropping to murmurs, the DJ seamlessly transitioning to a different track. The crowd parted like dark water, and 3 men moved through the space that opened for them. 2 were clearly security, broad-shouldered in black suits with telltale earpieces and expressionless faces that scanned the room continuously. But it was the man between them that caused the atmosphere to change. He wasn't exceptionally tall, but he moved as if the world bent around him, rather than the other way around. Dark hair cut close at the sides, but longer on top, jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His suit was clearly bespoke, the kind of subtle wealth that didn't need to announce itself. I'd worked at Obsidian for 7 months, and had never seen him before, but I knew immediately who he was. Everyone did. Dante Russo, owner of the club, owner of most of the neighborhood, the kind of man people spoke about in whispers. I turned away quickly, heading back to the bar. Survival instinct, maybe, like not staring directly at a predator in the wild. Elena, another waitress, grabbed my arm as I reached the service bar. "Do you see who just walked in?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's him. That's Russo." "I know," I said, pulling my arm free. "Can you cover section 3 for a minute? I need to check my phone." "Are you crazy?" "Not with him here. Tony will fire you on the spot." "It's the hospital," I said, and her face softened immediately. 2 minutes. I'll cover, but hurry." I slipped through the door marked staff only, down the narrow hallway to the locker room. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and listened to the voicemail. "Ms. Parker, this is Dr. Reeves. Your mother's latest test results have come back, and I'd like to discuss them with you. Please call my office to schedule an appointment tomorrow. It's important that we talk soon." The careful neutrality in his voice told me everything I needed to know. The treatment wasn't working. The experimental protocol we'd fought so hard to get her into, the one I'd taken this job to pay for, wasn't working. I leaned against the lockers, the cold metal pressing through my thin uniform, and allowed myself 10 seconds of despair. 10 seconds to feel the weight crushing my chest. 1, 2, 3. By 8, I was wiping away tears. By 10, I was straightening my uniform, checking my makeup in the small mirror inside my locker. The girl who stared back had shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. I stepped back into the hallway and nearly collided with a solid wall of black suit. One of the security men who had accompanied Russo stood directly in my path, his face impassive as he looked down at me. "Excuse me," I said, trying to step around him. He didn't move. "Ms. Parker?" My blood went cold. How did he know my name? "Yes." Mr. Russo would like a word, not a request. I glanced back toward the locker room, but there was nowhere to run. I need to get back to work. This is work. His tone left no room for argument. Follow me. He turned and walked down the hallway, past the main floor entrance, toward the private elevator that led to the offices upstairs, areas where regular staff like me never went. I followed, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. The elevator opened silently, and he motioned for me to enter. As the doors closed us in together, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal, pale face, wide eyes. I looked exactly how I felt, terrified. Am I in trouble? I finally asked as we ascended. The security man didn't look at me. Mr. Russo doesn't waste time on trouble. That wasn't reassuring. The elevator opened directly into a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The space was minimalist, black leather furniture, a massive desk, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than my mother's medical bills. Dante Russo stood with his back to us, looking out at the city lights, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. The security man gave me a slight push forward, then retreated, leaving us alone as the elevator doors whispered shut. For several long seconds, Russo didn't turn or speak. I stood frozen, afraid to move or make a sound. When he finally turned to face me, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Adriana Parker," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was tasting it. 24 years old, English literature major who dropped out in your final year when your mother got sick, working 3 jobs to pay for her treatment, living in that rundown apartment building on Westfield Avenue, the one with the broken security door and the super who never fixes the heating. Each word felt like a physical touch, invasive and intimate. He knew everything about me. Why did he know everything about me? "How do you—" "I make it my business to know who works for me," he said, setting his glass down and moving closer, especially when they catch my attention. He circled me slowly, like a shark circling prey. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, afraid to follow his movement. "And you, Miss Parker, have caught my attention." "I don't understand," I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. He came to stand in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, nothing like the overpowering scents the men downstairs bathed in. "7 months you've worked here, never late, never complained, taking every extra shift offered, fending off advances from clients with a smile that never quite reaches your eyes." My face burned. He'd been watching me. All this time he'd been watching me. "I need this job, Mr. Russo." "Dante," he corrected softly. "And yes, you do. For your mother's treatments, the ones that aren't working." I flinched as if he'd struck me. How could he possibly know about the voicemail I'd just received? "It's written all over your face," he said, answering my unspoken question. "You received bad news tonight." I said nothing, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. "I have a proposition for you, Adriana." There was something in his voice, a softness that hadn't been there before. When I finally dared to look up, the intensity in his dark eyes made me shiver. I swallowed hard. "Whatever you're suggesting, don't insult me." His voice hardened instantly. "If I wanted that kind of arrangement, there are plenty of women downstairs who would happily oblige." My cheeks burned with shame. "My apologies," I whispered. His expression softened again, almost imperceptibly. "I'm offering you a job, a different position. As my personal assistant. I don't understand. Double your current salary, full benefits. And—" He paused, studying my reaction. "Access to the best medical care for your mother. The kind not available to the general public." My heart stuttered. "Why would you do that for me? Let's say I see potential in you." He moved back to his desk, picking up a folder. "Everything is outlined here. Take it home. Read it. If you accept, be at this address tomorrow morning at 9. He held out the folder, and when I reached for it, his fingers brushed against mine. An electric current seemed to pass between us, and I jerked my hand back, clutching the folder to my chest. "I haven't agreed to anything," I said, finding a small spark of defiance. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise perhaps, and something else, something warmer. "No," he agreed. "You haven't." but you will." The certainty in his voice should have angered me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. "You can go," he said, turning away, dismissing me. But as I turned toward the elevator, he spoke again. "Adriana?" I paused, not turning back. "Yes?" "Don't make me wait too long for your answer. I'm not a patient man." The elevator doors opened as if on cue. I stepped inside, clutching the folder like a lifeline. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Dante Russo. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Possession, perhaps. Or hunger. It wasn't until I was back downstairs, hiding in a bathroom stall with shaking hands, that I opened the folder. Inside was a contract, a business card with an address, and a check made out to my mother's hospital for an amount that made my vision blur. The check was already signed. He knew I had no choice. I didn't finish my shift that night. I slipped out the back door, still in my uniform, and took the bus home in a daze. The folder clutched to my chest felt impossibly heavy, as if it contained not just papers, but my entire future. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that Dante Russo had been watching me for months, that the job offer wasn't spontaneous but meticulously planned, that I had already been chosen long before I ever set foot in his office, and that by walking onto that elevator tomorrow morning, I would be stepping into a cage gilded with promises I didn't yet understand. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing between hope and suspicion. By dawn, I'd convinced myself a dozen times to take the offer, and a dozen more to run as far from Dante Russo as possible. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, gaunt and pale against hospital sheets, still smiling bravely for my benefit. Morning light filtered through my thin curtains as I stood in front of the mirror, scrutinizing my appearance. I'd chosen my most professional outfit, a navy pencil skirt and white blouse I'd worn to college interviews years ago. The clothes felt like a costume, an attempt to look like someone who belonged in Dante Russo's world. The address on the card led me to a sleek high-rise in the financial district, the kind of building where you needed a key card just to enter the lobby. I stood outside, clutching my worn handbag, gathering courage. "Ms. Parker," I startled at the voice behind me. The same security man from last night materialized at my shoulder, his expression unchanged. "Good morning," I managed. He didn't respond, merely held the door open. Inside, he guided me to a private elevator, different from the one at the club, but equally intimidating. This one required a fingerprint scan, which he provided without comment. "Mr. Russo is expecting you," he finally said as the doors closed. It was the most words I'd heard from him at once. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment so vast it took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased panoramic views of the city, the morning sun glinting off glass and steel. The space was minimalist but luxurious. Italian leather, marble surfaces, and art that probably belonged in a museum. "You're punctual. I appreciate that." Dante Russo's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him watching me with those same intense eyes that had haunted my dreams last night. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like armor, a subtle contrast to the man I'd seen in the club. Daylight softened none of his edges. "I said 9 o'clock, I replied, aiming for confident but hearing the tremor in my voice. Most people arrive early when they're nervous. He gestured toward a dining table where breakfast was laid out. "Have you eaten?" I shook my head, suddenly aware of the emptiness in my stomach. I'd been too anxious to eat. "Sit," he commanded softly. Not a request. I obeyed, perching on the edge of a chair as he took the seat opposite. A woman appeared silently, not security, but staff of some kind, and poured coffee into delicate china cups before disappearing again. "I assume you've read the contract?" Dante said, stirring his coffee without looking at it. "Yes." I'd read it a dozen times, searching for hidden clauses or traps. "It's generous. Do you have questions?" I had hundreds, but one burned brighter than the rest. "Why me?" His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Direct." "Good." He set his spoon down precisely beside his cup. "You're intelligent, observant, and discreet. You handle difficult situations with grace, And you have motivation beyond money, my mother. Yes. His eyes never left mine. Those who work for money alone can be bought. Those who work for something more valuable cannot. And what exactly would I be doing as your personal assistant? The title felt loaded, dangerous. Whatever I require. At my expression, he added, administrative duties, scheduling, correspondence, accompanying me to meetings and events, being an extension of my will when I'm not present. I don't have experience with any of that. You'll learn. I took a sip of coffee to hide my uncertainty. It was the most delicious coffee I'd ever tasted. And my mother's treatment? I've already arranged for her transfer to a private facility. Dr. Alessandra Marino is expecting her this afternoon. She specializes in cases like your mother's. Her success rate is impressive. My hand trembled, coffee nearly spilling. You did this before I even accepted. As I said last night, I knew you would accept. His certainty should have offended me. Instead, it sent that same strange shiver down my spine. There's a car waiting to take you to the hospital now, he continued. You can sign the paperwork for your mother's transfer, collect her things, and explain the situation. The car will then bring you both to the new facility. And then? And then you come back here. Your employment begins today. I set my cup down carefully. Mr. Russo. Dante. He corrected again. Dante, I conceded, the name feeling intimate on my tongue. This is all happening very quickly. I don't waste time, Adriana. Not mine, and not yours. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with a fluid motion. Especially not when your mother's health is deteriorating by the day. The urgency in his voice matched the fear in my heart. How did he know so much? Why did he care? I don't understand why you're doing this, I whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Not all actions require immediate understanding. Sometimes you must simply accept the gift being offered. Gift. As if this wasn't a transaction with terms I couldn't yet see. The car is waiting, he said, stepping back. Go to your mother. I'll expect you back by 4, and just like that, I was dismissed. The same security man appeared to escort me down, as if summoned by an invisible signal. In the sleek black car with tinted windows, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The driver remained silent as we navigated through morning traffic toward the hospital, where my mother had spent the last 9 months of her life. The hospital corridors felt different today. The same antiseptic smell, the same fluorescent lighting, but I moved through them with new purpose. When I reached my mother's room, she was awake, thumbing through a dog-eared paperback, the same one she'd been reading for weeks, unable to focus long enough to finish it. Adi, she said, her face lighting up. The nickname from my childhood never failed to warm my heart. You're early today. I sat on the edge of her bed, taking her frail hand in mine. How could I explain what had happened, what I'd agreed to? Mom, there's been a change in your treatment plan, I began carefully. I told her a version of the truth. That through connections at work, I'd secured her a place at an exclusive treatment facility with a specialist in her condition. I left out the parts about Dante Russo, about the deal I'd made. Honey, we can't afford that, she said immediately, her brow creasing with worry, always worrying about me even now. It's covered, I assured her. Everything's covered. How? Her eyes, so like mine, searched my face with mother's intuition that time and illness hadn't dulled. I got a new job, a better one, with benefits. It wasn't a lie, exactly. Her smile was tentative. That's wonderful, but it sounds too good to be true. It was. I knew it was. But I smiled back anyway. Sometimes we get lucky. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork, packing her few belongings and waiting for discharge approvals. The hospital staff seemed puzzled by the sudden transfer but offered no resistance once they saw the authorization forms, each bearing an embossed logo I didn't recognize, but which opened doors with remarkable efficiency. The facility we arrived at bore little resemblance to a hospital. Nestled on manicured grounds outside the city, it looked more like a luxury spa, all natural stone and glass, with fountains and gardens visible from the circular drive where our car stopped. A team greeted us immediately, a doctor in a tailored suit rather than scrubs, nurses who looked like concierges, and assistants who took charge of everything with practiced efficiency. My mother gripped my hand tightly as they wheeled her inside, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ms. Parker," the doctor, Dr. Marino herself, addressed me after my mother had been settled into a suite that looked more like a 5-star hotel room than a hospital. "May I have a word?" In a private consultation room, she explained my mother's new treatment protocol in detail. Cutting-edge therapies, some experimental, some not yet available to the general public. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time in months. "Mr. Russo has given explicit instructions regarding your mother's care," Dr. Song, Marino said, studying me with curious eyes. "She is to receive the absolute best we can provide, without limitation." "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to say. "He must think very highly of you," she observed neutrally. I had no answer for that. When it was time to leave, my mother clung to me with surprising strength. "You'll come back soon?" she asked. "As often as I can," I promised, kissing her cheek. "This is a good thing, Mom. The best doctors, the best care." "I'm more concerned about you," she said softly, her eyes knowing. "What exactly is this new job, Adriana?" "Nothing to worry about," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just administrative work. Boring stuff." She didn't believe me. I could tell, but she let it go. "Be careful, sweetheart. Nothing in this world comes without a price." The truth of her words haunted me on the drive back to the city. What price would Dante Russo eventually demand? The car delivered me back to the high-rise at exactly 3:45. The security man, whose name I still didn't know, escorted me up to the penthouse. This time, Dante wasn't alone. 3 men in suits were seated in the living area, tumblers of dark liquor in hand despite the early hour. They fell silent when I entered, all eyes turning to assess me with open curiosity. "Gentlemen," Dante said, rising smoothly, "my new assistant, Adriana Parker." The way he said "my" sent a ripple of awareness through me. "The one from the club?" one of the men asked with a smirk. Older, with silver at his temples and an expensive watch glinting at his wrist. "Adriana, these are my associates," Dante continued, ignoring the question. "Mr. Vega, Mr. Caruso, and Mr. Leone." I nodded politely, uncomfortable under their scrutiny. "A pretty addition to your staff," Leone said in heavily accented English, raising his glass in my direction, though perhaps a distraction. "Adriana, wait for me in my office," Dante said, his tone light but his eyes hardening. "Through those doors." I moved quickly, relieved to escape. Behind me, I heard Dante's voice drop to a register that raised goosebumps along my arms. "She is not a topic for discussion." The office was as imposing as the rest of the penthouse, masculine and minimalist, with another stunning view of the city. I stood awkwardly, unsure where to wait, or what to do with myself. A photo on the desk caught my eye, the only personal touch in the room. A family portrait, a man and woman with 3 young boys, all dark-haired and solemn-faced. The oldest boy, perhaps 10, had eyes I recognized. "My father, mother, and brothers," Dante said from the doorway, making me jump. I hadn't heard him approach. "I'm sorry. I wasn't—" "It's there to be seen," he said, closing the door behind him. The sounds of the men in the other room were immediately silenced. "Your family," I said, stating the obvious. "Gone now." His expression revealed nothing, but his voice held centuries of pain. "All of them. I'm sorry." He dismissed my sympathy with a slight shake of his head. "How is your mother settling in?" "Well, I think it's amazing there. Dr. Marino is the best. If anyone can help your mother, she can." "Thank you," I said, the words inadequate for the hope he'd given me. "I don't know how I'll ever repay—" "You work for me now," he cut me off. "That's repayment enough." He moved to a cabinet, unlocked it with a key from his pocket, and removed a sleek laptop and a phone still in its box. "These are yours. The laptop has everything you need to begin learning your duties. The phone is secure. Only I can reach you on it." He set them on the desk between us. "Your personal phone stays here when you leave each day." "You want my personal phone?" "I want no distractions when you're not here, and no security risks. The only people who need to reach you can do so through me. Control." This was about control. "What about my apartment?" My things? Already taken care of. Your lease has been paid out, and your belongings are being packed as we speak. They'll be delivered to your new residence tomorrow. My new residence? The ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The floor below this one. It's more convenient for your duties, and significantly more secure than your current situation. Anger flared through my shock. You can't just... I can and I have. His tone brooked no argument. Your safety is now my concern, Adriana. The work you'll be doing for me requires discretion and security. What kind of work requires that level of security? I demanded, finding courage in indignation. He studied me for a long moment, then gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. What do you know about me, Adriana? About what I do? You own the club, I said carefully. And other businesses, I assume. A smile touched his lips, almost sad. A diplomatic answer. Let me be more direct. You know who I am, what I am. Everyone in this city does, whether they speak it aloud or not. My heart raced. I've heard things. And yet you came here today. You accepted my offer. For my mother. Yes. For your mother. He stepped closer. I respect that loyalty. It's why you're here. But understand this. From this moment forward, that same loyalty belongs to me. My business, my secrets, my interests are now yours to protect. What exactly is your business, Dante? I asked, suddenly needing to hear him say it. His eyes never left mine. Power, protection, profit. In that order. Not a direct confession, but we both knew what he meant. And if I've changed my mind, something dangerous flickered in his gaze. Have you? I thought of my mother in that beautiful facility of the Hope and Doctor. Marino's eyes, when she described the treatment plan of the mountain of debt, suddenly vanished. No, I admitted quietly. Good. He checked his watch, another understated display of wealth. We leave in an hour for dinner. Giovanni will show you to your temporary quarters where you can freshen up. There's a suitable dress waiting for you. Dinner? With who? With me, Adriana. That possessive note again, sending heat curling through my stomach. Tonight is about you learning who I am. Tomorrow, you learn what I do. As if summoned, the security man, Giovanni apparently, appeared at the door. One more thing, Dante said as I turned to leave. The men you met today, keep your distance from them, especially Leone. Why? His eyes darkened. Because they see you as a weakness of mine. And in our world, perceived weaknesses are exploited. I'm not your weakness, I said, confused. No, he agreed, his gaze traveling slowly over my face. You're not. But the way he looked at me made me wonder if I might become one. The suitable dress waiting for me was a black silk sheath that fit as if it had been made for me. Which I realized with a chill it probably had been. Simple but elegant, with a price tag I was afraid to imagine. I stared at my reflection in the guest bathroom mirror, barely recognizing myself. My temporary quarters, as Dante had called them, were a spacious guest suite within his penthouse. Another indication of how thoroughly he'd planned my capture. I couldn't think of a gentler word for it. Despite the luxury surrounding me, I felt the invisible bars. When I emerged, Dante was waiting in the living room, his back to me as he looked out over the city. The setting sun cast him in silhouette, a dark figure against a burning sky. The dress fits well, he said without turning. I paused, unsettled. How did you... Your reflection, he explained, nodding toward the window where, indeed, my image was faintly visible. He turned then, his eyes taking me in with a thoroughness that made my skin warm, beautiful. The compliment hung between us, intimate and uncomfortable. I looked away first. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere private, he answered, offering his arm. I dislike public attention. Giovanni and another security man, whose name I learned was Marco, escorted us down to a waiting car, a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light. Marco drove while Giovanni sat in the front passenger seat, his posture alert, despite the seemingly relaxed setting. Dante sat beside me in the back, close enough that I could feel the heat of him through his suit. He smelled of that same subtle cologne. Sandalwood, and something darker I couldn't name. You have questions, he said as we pulled into traffic. Not a question. I had hundreds, but settled on the most immediate. How did you know my dress size? A slight smile. I know many things about you, Adriana. Your dress size is among the least interesting. That didn't answer my question, but I moved on. How long have you been watching me? Since your second week at Obsidian. He said it casually, as if admitting to long-term surveillance was perfectly normal. You caught my attention when you handled a situation with a particularly difficult client. He'd had too much to drink, was becoming aggressive with one of the other waitresses. I remembered the incident. I spilled a drink on him, made it look like an accident. Yes. Most would have called security, created a scene. You found a more elegant solution. The way you diffused his anger, apologized so sincerely he ended up feeling like he'd somehow wronged you. It was artful. It was survival, I corrected. Women in service jobs learn these skills or they don't last. He considered this, nodding slowly. Even more impressive that it came naturally to you. The car turned onto a road leading out of the city, toward the coast. Soon the urban landscape gave way to more exclusive neighborhoods, gated estates set back from the road, hidden behind high walls and security systems. Where are we going? I asked again. My home. I thought the penthouse is one of my residences, yes, but not my home. We drove through wrought iron gates that opened silently at our approach, then up a long winding driveway flanked by old-growth trees. When the house came into view, I couldn't contain a soft gasp. It was a modern fortress, glass and stone, and sharp angles perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Lights glowed warmly from within, illuminating multiple levels, and what appeared to be a sprawling terrace. The grounds around it were immaculate, with security features cleverly disguised among the landscaping. Marco pulled up to the front entrance, where a middle-aged woman in a simple black dress waited. Giovanni exited first, scanning the area before opening Dante's door. The choreography was practiced, protective. Adriana, this is Mrs. Russo, Dante said as we approached the woman. My mother's cousin. She oversees my household. The woman's eyes assessed me quickly, revealing nothing. Welcome, Miss Parker, she said, her accent similar to Dante's but heavier. Dinner is prepared. Inside, the house was a study in contrasts. Cold modernism softened by touches of old-world elegance. Art that belonged in museums hung casually on walls. Antique furniture sat alongside contemporary pieces. The overall effect was disorienting, like stepping between centuries. This has been in my family for 3 generations, Dante explained as we moved through the space. Though I've made significant modifications. I could only imagine what kind of modifications a man like Dante Russo would make to a family estate. Security systems, certainly. Perhaps escape routes. Maybe even the kinds of rooms no one spoke about. Dinner was served in a dining room with a wall of glass overlooking the ocean. The table was set for 2, with fine china and crystal that caught the light from the chandelier above. Mrs. Russo supervised 2 young men who served us silently, some sort of fish I didn't recognize, prepared simply but exquisitely, paired with wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. You're not eating, Dante observed after several minutes of silence. I forced myself to take a bite, though my appetite had fled. It's delicious, I said truthfully. But you're distracted. His perception was unnerving. Ask what you want to know, Adriana. Tonight is for honesty between us. I set down my fork. What do you want from me? He took a sip of wine, considering. Loyalty, discretion, intelligence. And nothing more? His eyes met mine over the rim of his glass. Would it bother you if there were more? Heat crept into my cheeks. I'm not. That is. I know what you're not, Adriana, he said softly. You're not for sale. Not in that way. I've made that clear from the beginning. Relief and something like disappointment mingled uncomfortably in my chest. Then why am I here? In your home? Wearing clothes you provided? Eating at your table? This feels very personal for a business arrangement. Because it is personal, he said simply. Everything I do is personal. I don't separate business from the rest of my life the way some men do. And what is your business, exactly? I pressed, emboldened by the wine and his apparent openness. You own the club, But that's not all. No, he agreed. That's merely the most visible part. I have interests in real estate, shipping, private security, and several other ventures. Some legitimate, some less so. The casual admission hung between us. And which will I be involved in? All of them, eventually. You'll learn each part of my operation, beginning with the legitimate businesses. As you prove yourself, your responsibilities will expand. Into the less legitimate areas? I said, not a question. Yes. No apology, no attempt to soften it. Does that trouble you? I thought about it honestly. I don't know yet. He seemed to appreciate the honesty. A fair answer. I don't expect blind allegiance, Adriana. I expect you to question, to think for yourself. That's why you're here. I thought I was here because you've been watching me for months and decided to... I struggled for the right word. Collect me. Something darkened in his expression. Is that how you see this? As a collection? What would you call it? For both of us. An opportunity. What opportunity do you get from this arrangement? You're already giving me everything. My mother's treatment, a new home, a salary I could never earn otherwise. What do you gain? He leaned forward slightly. Someone I can trust. You don't know me, I countered. I know you better than you might think. His voice lowered. I know you cry in the staff bathroom when you think no one is looking. I know you send flowers to your mother every Sunday, even when you can barely afford rent. I know you keep a journal where you write stories you never show anyone. I know you're smart enough and strong enough to survive in my world without breaking. Each revelation felt like a violation and a caress all at once. He'd been inside my life, my privacy, for months. That's not knowing me, I whispered. That's surveillance. Perhaps, he conceded. But it was enough to make me certain. Of what? That you're exactly what I've been looking for. The intensity in his gaze made me look away, uncomfortable with the weight of expectation I saw there. And if I disappoint you, you won't. The certainty in his voice was maddening. You can't know that. I can. I do. He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. Tell me about your father. The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. What? Your father. He left when you were young, yes? Pain, old but still sharp, twisted in my chest. He died when I was 12. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Surprise, perhaps. The records indicate he abandoned your family. Is that what your surveillance told you? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. My mother let people believe that. It was easier than explaining that he was killed over a gambling debt he couldn't pay. Less shameful, somehow. Understanding dawned in his eyes. I see. And somehow I felt he truly did. He was a good man, I said defensively. Just weak when it came to certain temptations. And your mother protected his memory by creating a different story. I nodded. She loved him, despite everything. Love makes us vulnerable, he said, an odd note in his voice. It can be exploited. Is that why you don't have anyone? I asked boldly. To avoid vulnerability. His laugh was unexpected, brief and genuine. What makes you think I don't have anyone, Adriana? My cheeks warmed. I just assumed, because a man in my position seems isolated, or because I've brought you into my home? Both, I thought, but said nothing. I have a family, he said after a moment. Not blood, not anymore. But people I would die for, people who would die for me. That doesn't sound like love, I observed. It sounds like loyalty. Sometimes they're the same thing. He studied me with those dark, inscrutable eyes. Have you ever been in love, Adriana? The question felt intrusive, yet I found myself answering honestly. No, not really. There hasn't been time. Because of your mother's illness. Before that, it was college, working multiple jobs to pay tuition. And now... I gestured vaguely, encompassing our surreal situation. And now you're here, he finished for me. A silence fell between us, not uncomfortable but charged with something I couldn't name. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs below, a constant rhythm like a heartbeat. May I ask you something personal? I ventured after a while. He inclined his head slightly. You may ask. I may choose not to answer, fair enough. I gathered my courage. The photograph in your office, your family. What happened to them? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes retreated, a door closing. What happened to many immigrant families in this city 20 years ago? They crossed the wrong people. I'm sorry, I said softly. It was a long time ago. Is that why you... I searched for a delicate way to phrase it. Why I became what I am? He finished the thought without rancor. Partially. It's difficult to believe in legitimate authority when it fails to protect those you love. There was a story there, deeper than he was telling, but I sensed pressing further would shut him down completely, and now you're the authority, I said instead. In my world, yes. He reached for the wine bottle, refilling my glass, then his. Which brings us back to why you're here. To help you maintain that authority? To help me expand it. He leaned back, studying me. There are changes coming, Adriana, shifts in the landscape. I need people I can trust absolutely at my side. And you trust me? A cocktail waitress you've known for less than a day? I trust what I've observed in you over months. Your character, your resilience. His voice softened marginally. Your capacity for loyalty. To my mother, I pointed out. For now, he agreed, but loyalty, once earned, can transfer, can grow. The implication hung between us, both a promise and a threat. After dinner, he showed me parts of the house. A library with first editions that made my literature-loving heart race. A terrace overlooking the churning ocean below. A room filled with art that belonged in museums. Always with Giovanni following at a discreet distance, always aware of where exits were, who might be watching. In a study lined with books and dominated by a massive desk, Dante paused. This is where I began, he said, almost to himself. After my family was killed, sitting at this desk, planning how to survive, how to ensure no one could ever hurt the people I cared about again. The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. How old were you? 17, he said. The oldest son. The only survivor. I couldn't imagine it. The weight of such loss, such responsibility at that age. You were just a boy. Boys become men quickly when necessary. He turned to face me, something fierce in his gaze. Remember that, Adriana. Whatever else you hear about me, whatever truths you discover as we work together, remember that everything I've built began here, with a promise to protect what's mine. The possessive way he said it sent a shiver through me. On the drive back to the city, I watched the lights of other lives blur past the tinted windows. Dante sat beside me, silent, but present in a way that filled the space between us. Not touching, yet I felt him everywhere. Why did you really bring me to your home? I asked as we neared the city limits. You could have told me all this at the penthouse. He considered the question for a moment. I wanted you to see where I come from, who I am when I'm not performing for others. And who is that? He turned to look at me, moonlight casting half his face in shadow. Someone who recognizes himself in you. The words stayed with me as we ascended to the penthouse, as he showed me to the guest suite where I would spend my first night in captivity. Gilded, comfortable captivity, but captivity nonetheless. Rest well, he said at the door. Tomorrow your real work begins. Dante, I called as he turned to leave. He paused, looking back. May I call my mother? To say goodnight? Something softened in his expression. Of course. Use the secure phone I gave you. It's already programmed with her number at the facility. When he was gone, I sat on the edge of the obscenely comfortable bed, turning the phone over in my hands. This small concession, allowing me to call my mother, seemed significant somehow. A gesture of understanding, perhaps. Or just another way to remind me of his power over the things I cared about most. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. Adriana, is everything okay? Everything's fine, Mom, I assured her. I just wanted to hear your voice. How are you settling in? This place is unbelievable, honey. The doctor spent an hour with me today. A whole hour. And the food. She laughed softly. I actually have an appetite for the first time in months. Relief washed through me, momentarily drowning out my doubts. That's wonderful. But I'm worried about you, she continued, her tone shifting. This new job. There's something you're not telling me. My mother had always seen through me. It's complicated, I admitted, but it's a good opportunity. Really good. Is it safe? She asked directly. I thought of Dante's watchful security, of the way his mere presence commanded respect or fear. Yes, I said, not entirely a lie. I'm safe. And this boss of yours, what's his name? I hesitated. Dante Russo. The silence that followed stretched too long. Mom? Russo, she repeated, her voice suddenly tight. From the Russo family? The ones who control the East Side docks? Ice slid down my spine. You know of them? Oh, Adriana. She sounded exhausted suddenly, old in a way that had nothing to do with illness. What have you gotten yourself into? It's not what you think, I said automatically, though I wasn't sure what she thought exactly. How do you know about the Russo family? Another long pause. Your father, she finally said. The gambling debts that got him killed, they were to the Russos. The world tilted beneath me. What? Not directly to them, she clarified quickly. To one of their associates. A man named Vega. One of the men in Dante's penthouse earlier. The one with the silver at his temples and the heavy watch. Are you sure? I whispered. I never forget a name like that, she said wearily. Not when it cost me my husband. My mind raced. Did Dante know? Was that why he'd chosen me? Some twisted game of revenge or atonement? Adriana, listen to me. My mother's voice grew urgent. You need to get away from them. Whatever they're offering, whatever they're paying you, it's not worth it. I can't, I said, the truth of it settling like a stone in my stomach. Your treatment, this facility. I would rather die than have you caught up with those people, she said fiercely. Don't say that. My voice broke. Please don't say that. We were both silent for a moment, the weight of revelation heavy between us. Be careful, she finally said. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise, I whispered, though I had no idea what careful meant in Dante Russo's world. After we hung up, I sat motionless on the bed, my mind spinning with possibilities. Dante had said he'd been watching me for months. Had he known about my father all along? Was I part of some elaborate scheme I couldn't yet see? Or was it truly coincidence, the cruel kind that seemed to govern my life? I wouldn't sleep tonight, I knew, not with these questions burning through me. Tomorrow, when I faced Dante again, I would have to decide, confront him with what I'd learned, or keep this knowledge to myself. A small piece of power in a game where I had none. For now, I sat in the luxury he'd provided, feeling more trapped than I'd ever felt in my life. Dawn found me curled in a chair by the window, watching the city emerge from darkness. I hadn't slept. My mind had circled endlessly around my mother's revelation, examining it from every angle, searching for meaning. The Russo family, Vega, my father's debts, Dante's interest in me. There had to be a connection. Coincidences this precise didn't exist in real life. A soft knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find Mrs. Russo, not Dante's mother's cousin from last night, but a different woman entirely. She was younger, perhaps 40, with a crisp uniform and an efficient manner. Good morning, Miss Parker. Mr. Russo asked me to bring you these. She handed me a garment bag and a box. Breakfast will be ready in 30 minutes. Mr. Russo will meet you then. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me with more questions. The garment bag contained a tailored black pantsuit that fit me perfectly, and the box held leather pumps that were both elegant and practical. The message was clear. I was being remade in Dante's image. I showered and dressed mechanically, my mind still churning. By the time I entered the dining room, I'd made my decision. I would say nothing for now. I would watch and learn, gathering information until I understood exactly what Dante wanted from me. He was already seated, reading something on a tablet that he set aside when I entered. His eyes moved over me approvingly. You look rested, he lied politely. Thank you for the clothes, I said, ignoring the observation. Your wardrobe will be delivered today, along with your other belongings. The apartment below is being prepared. I took my seat, accepting coffee from the same silent attendant from yesterday. How many people work for you here, in this building? A dozen or so. Security, household staff, a few administrative personnel. He studied me over his coffee cup. Why do you ask? I'm trying to understand the scope of your operation. A slight smile. The penthouse staff is just the beginning. You'll meet others today as we visit some of my businesses. I nodded, pushing food around my plate without eating. My appetite had fled with last night's revelations. Something's troubling you, he observed. Not a question. I met his gaze directly. I spoke with my mother last night. Yes, I know. At my raised eyebrow, he added, the phone logs all calls automatically. Of course it did. I'd been naive to think otherwise. How is she? He asked, seeming genuinely interested. Better. The care there is. I searched for words. It's everything I could have hoped for. I'm glad. But she's worried about me. His expression didn't change, naturally. She's your mother. She recognized your name. There. A slight pause, almost imperceptible. His coffee cup hovered for a fraction of a second, before continuing its journey to his lips. Did she? He asked mildly. She says my father's gambling debts were to your family, or an associate of your family. A man named Vega. Dante set down his cup carefully. Your mother is well informed, so it's true? Partially. I waited, but he offered nothing more. Are you going to elaborate? He studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Your father borrowed money from Antonio Vega. Yes. Vega worked for my father at the time, and when my father couldn't pay, Vega acted on his own initiative. The careful phrasing wasn't lost on me. You mean he killed my father without authorization? Yes. The bluntness startled me. I'd expected denials, deflections, not this calm admission. My father never approved of how Vega conducted his affairs, Dante continued. He was excessive, undisciplined, but useful in certain contexts. And now Vega works for you. A complicated inheritance. His eyes never left mine, one I've been gradually untangling. Did you know? I demanded. When you chose me? Did you know who I was? Yes. The confirmation struck like a physical blow. Why? Is this some kind of twisted atonement, or do you just collect the children of people your family has destroyed? A flash of something, anger, perhaps, crossed his face, quickly controlled. I chose you because you're exceptional, Adriana. Your connection to Vega was a complication, not a motivation. I don't believe you. That's your prerogative. He folded his napkin precisely, placing it beside his plate. But consider this. If I wanted to use you for some scheme related to your father, why would I have revealed the connection at all? Why not keep you in ignorance? It was a fair point. Then why tell me now? I didn't. Your mother did. He rose from his chair. Finish your breakfast. We leave in 20 minutes. He exited the room, leaving me with a cold breakfast and colder comfort. His explanation made logical sense, but something still felt off, like a puzzle with missing pieces. True to his word, 20 minutes later we descended to the garage beneath the building, where a different car and driver awaited. This time, only Giovanni accompanied us. Where are we going? I asked as we pulled into morning traffic. To see one of my legitimate businesses, Dante replied, the one that began everything else. We drove to the port, where massive cargo ships loomed like steel islands against the horizon. The car passed through multiple security checkpoints before stopping at a modern building overlooking the docks. Inside, it was all glass and steel, a corporate headquarters like any other, with employees in business attire moving purposefully through the space. Russo Shipping International, Dante explained as we entered a private elevator, founded by my grandfather when he immigrated here in 1952. Built by my father into the largest independent shipping operation on the East Coast, and expanded by me into what it is today. Which is? A multinational corporation with terminals in 12 countries and a fleet of 27 vessels. The elevator opened directly into a corner office with commanding views of the harbor. A middle-aged man rose from behind the desk, smiling warmly. Dante, he greeted, coming forward to embrace him. Twice in 1 month. I'm honored. Uncle Sal. Dante returned the embrace with evident affection. This is Adriana Parker, my new assistant. The older man turned to me with curious eyes. Ah, the famous Adriana. A pleasure to meet you. Famous? I wondered how many of Dante's people had been briefed about me. Adriana, this is Salvatore Costa, my father's oldest friend and the current CEO of Russo Shipping. Figurehead CEO, the older man corrected good-naturedly. Everyone knows who really runs things. Dante smiled slightly. Uncle Sal maintains the legitimate face of our operations. While this one, Sal gestured to Dante, makes all the interesting decisions behind the scenes. Come, sit, tell me how I can help with your education today. We spent the morning there, with Sal patiently explaining the intricacies of international shipping, logistics, import regulations, and the complex web of relationships that kept goods flowing through the port. I took notes on the tablet Dante had provided, asking questions when appropriate. It was normal, corporate, nothing like what I'd expected from my first day working for a man I knew to be involved in organized crime. You're surprised, Dante observed as we drove to our next destination. I expected something different, less legitimate. Yes, he smiled faintly. 90% of what I do is completely legal, Adriana. Shipping, real estate, securities. It's the other 10% that requires special management. Is that what I'll be doing? Special management? Eventually. For now, you learn how everything works, how it all connects. Our next stop was a construction site downtown, where a luxury high-rise was taking shape. We met with architects, contractors, and city inspectors, all of whom treated Dante with a deference that bordered on fear. Again, everything appeared legitimate on the surface, though I noticed how certain conversations halted when we approached, how some men wouldn't meet Dante's eyes. After lunch at an exclusive restaurant where the owner himself served us and refused to accept payment, we visited a private bank where Dante introduced me to financial advisors who managed what he called his public portfolio. The numbers they casually discussed made my head spin. By late afternoon, I was exhausted and overwhelmed by the scope of Dante's empire. We returned to the penthouse, where he led me to a home office I hadn't seen before. Your workspace, he explained. When we're not out in the field, the office was smaller than his, but equally well appointed, with a desk positioned to face the door rather than the window. A security measure, I realized. A laptop sat ready, along with several folders. These contain the basics you'll need to understand my operations, he said, gesturing to the folders. Company structures, key personnel, financial channels. Study them tonight. Tomorrow we'll continue your education. I sank into the chair, suddenly aware of how little I'd slept. It's a lot to absorb. You'll manage. There was that certainty again. Any questions from today? Dozens, I admitted. But I'm not sure where to start. He leaned against the desk, closer than necessary. Start with what's bothering you most. I looked up at him, finding courage. Vega, if you know he killed my father, why do you still work with him? Something cold flickered in Dante's eyes. Who says I do? He was in your living room yesterday. Keep your friends close, he said softly, and your enemies closer. The implication hung between us. He's your enemy? Let's say we have a complicated relationship that is nearing its natural conclusion. A chill ran through me. What does that mean? It means you should stay away from him, as I advised yesterday. He straightened, moving toward the door. Study those files. We'll speak more tomorrow. Dante, I called as he reached the doorway. He paused, looking back. Where do I fit in all this? Really? He considered the question seriously. Right now? Nowhere. You're learning, observing. In time, you'll become my voice when I'm not present. My eyes and ears in places I can't always be. Your spy. My representative, he corrected. In many ways, my most important asset, because I know your secrets, because you'll understand the whole picture. Few do. After he left, I opened the first folder, trying to focus through my exhaustion. Organization charts, financial statements, property holdings. On paper, Dante Russo was a successful businessman with diverse interests and considerable wealth. Nothing indicated the other 10% he'd mentioned. I was halfway through the second folder when my secure phone rang. My mother's facility. Hello? I answered anxiously. Miss Parker, this is Dr. Marino. My heart lurched. Is everything all right? My mother is doing well, she assured me quickly. Very well, in fact. Her response to the initial treatments has been most encouraging. Relief flooded me. That's wonderful. I'm calling because she's been asking to see you. I understand your new position keeps you busy, but perhaps you could visit tomorrow, even briefly? Of course, I said immediately. I'll speak to Mr. Russo. No need, Dr. Marino said smoothly. He's already approved it. A car will collect you at 10 tomorrow morning. Of course he had. Nothing happened in my life now without Dante's approval. The thought should have angered me more than it did. After the call, I forced myself to finish reviewing the files, making notes on questions to ask. Around 8, Mrs. Russo, the younger one from this morning, appeared with dinner on a tray. Mr. Russo sends his apologies, she explained. He was called away on business. I was secretly relieved. The day had been intense enough without more one-on-one time with Dante and his penetrating gaze. After eating, I explored my temporary quarters more thoroughly. The guest suite included a bedroom, bathroom, and small sitting area, all appointed with the same understated luxury as the rest of the penthouse. My meager belongings had been arranged neatly. Clothes hung in the closet, books stacked on the nightstand, even my worn stuffed rabbit from childhood placed carefully on the bed. The intimacy of it, someone handling my things, knowing what mattered to me, made me shiver. I picked up the rabbit, a gift from my father on my 8th birthday. Had Dante seen it? Had he known what it meant to me? I fell asleep clutching it, a child's talisman against the unknown darkness. The nightmare came swiftly, my father falling, blood blooming across his chest, Vega's face morphing into Dante's, then back again. I woke, gasping. Sheets twisted around me, the city lights casting harsh shadows across the room. Easy, a voice said from the darkness. You're safe. I jerked upright, heart hammering. Dante sat in a chair near the window, watching me. In the dim light, he looked almost ethereal. A guardian angel or a demon, I couldn't decide which. What are you doing in here? I demanded, pulling the sheets higher. Security alerted me that you were in distress. His voice was calm, matter of fact. You were crying out. I touched my cheeks, finding them wet. So you just came in? Without permission? Your safety is my concern now, Adriana. That includes nightmares. I don't need you to protect me from dreams. He remained still, watching me with those impossible-to-read eyes. What were you dreaming about? Nothing. I lied. Your father, he guessed accurately. And Vega. I looked away. Please leave. Adriana. Something in his voice made me meet his gaze again. I give you my word, Vega will never harm you. No one will, while you're under my protection. Is that supposed to comfort me, that I've traded one captor for another? He stood slowly, moving to the edge of the bed. In the darkness, his presence felt overwhelming. Is that how you see me? As your captor? What else should I call someone who's arranged every aspect of my life without my consent? Who monitors my calls and enters my room while I sleep? Protector, he suggested softly. Ally. Perhaps one day, friend. Friends don't own each other, I whispered. He reached out, his fingertips brushing my cheek so lightly I might have imagined it. Get some rest. The car will take you to see your mother at 10. After he left, I sat awake for a long time, my skin burning where he'd touched me. Morning brought clarity, or at least the semblance of it. I showered and dressed in clothes that still felt like a costume, a simple blue dress from my new wardrobe, elegant but understated. As promised, a car waited downstairs at 10, with Giovanni at the wheel. No escort today? I asked as we pulled away from the building. Mr. Russo has meetings, Giovanni replied, the most words I'd heard from him at once. I'm to remain with you at the facility. The drive to my mother's treatment center took nearly an hour, giving me time to gather my thoughts. I needed to warn her to be careful what she said. If my phone was monitored, The facility was surely under Dante's surveillance as well. My mother was sitting in a garden courtyard when I arrived, color in her cheeks that I hadn't seen in months. She rose to embrace me, and I was shocked by the strength in her arms. "You look better," I said, blinking back tears. "I feel better," she replied, holding me at arm's length to examine me. "And you look different." "New clothes," I said awkwardly. "Part of the job." We sat on a stone bench beneath a flowering tree, Giovanni standing at a discreet distance that was still close enough to overhear anything said above a whisper. "He's one of them?" my mother asked quietly, nodding toward Giovanni. I nodded slightly. "We should be careful what we discuss." She squeezed my hand in understanding. "Tell me about your new job then, in general terms." I gave her an edited version of the past 2 days. Administrative assistant to a businessman with diverse interests, learning the ropes of his organization, living in a company apartment for convenience. "And this businessman," she said carefully, "he treats you well?" "Yes," I answered truthfully. "He's been considerate." She studied my face, reading between the lines as mothers do. "But you're not free to leave." I glanced at Giovanni, then back at her. "It's complicated. My position requires certain commitments." "Adriana." She took both my hands in hers. "Whatever they're holding over you, even my life, it's not worth your freedom, your safety." "I am safe," I insisted, "and I'm learning things, important things." "About what happened to your father?" I nodded slightly. "Be careful," she whispered. "These people, their world operates by different rules, different values." "I'm beginning to see that," I admitted. "But I think Dante may be different from what we assumed." A shadow crossed her face. "Don't be fooled by charm or kindness, honey. Men like that, they take what they want, and once they have it, they don't let go." I thought of Dante's words last night. Protector, ally, friend, and the unspoken possibility beneath them. "I know what I'm doing," I said, trying to convince myself as much as her, "and I'll be careful. I promise." We spent the next hour talking about her treatment, the facility, anything but the dangerous truth of my situation. When it was time to leave, she held me tightly. "I love you," she whispered in my ear. "Remember who you are." In the car, Giovanni remained silent as we wound back toward the city. I stared out the window, turning my mother's warning over in my mind. Remember who you are. But who was I now? The girl who had served drinks at Obsidian felt like a stranger, someone from another lifetime. As we approached the outskirts of the city, Giovanni's phone rang. He answered with a single word, listened for a moment, then made a sharp turn onto a different highway. "Where are we going?" I asked, suddenly alert. "Change of plans," he said tersely. "Mr. Russo wants you brought to him directly." "Where is he?" Giovanni didn't answer, accelerating onto a stretch of road I didn't recognize. My heart rate quickened as the city fell away behind us, replaced by industrial zones and eventually docklands I'd never seen before. We pulled up to a warehouse complex surrounded by high fences and security cameras. Giovanni flashed an ID at a checkpoint, and heavy gates opened to admit us. The car stopped at a nondescript entrance where Marco waited, his expression grim. "Is something wrong?" I asked as Giovanni handed me over to him. "Inside," was all Marco said, leading me through dim corridors that smelled of salt and metal. We entered a large open space filled with shipping containers. In the center stood Dante, his back to me, facing a man kneeling on the concrete floor. Even from behind, I recognized him. "Vega, Adriana," Dante said without turning. "Right on time." Fear crawled up my spine. What's happening? Now he turned, and the expression on his face chilled me to the bone. This wasn't the Dante who'd touched my cheek in the darkness, who'd spoken of protection and alliance. This was someone else entirely, someone with ice in his veins and death in his eyes. "Justice," he said simply. "Long overdue." Vega looked up at me, recognition dawning in his bloodshot eyes. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, blood drying at the corner of his mouth. His hands were bound behind his back, his once immaculate suit torn and stained. "You," he croaked. "Parker's girl." A chill ran through me. He knew who I was, Had known all along, perhaps. Adriana, Dante said calmly, as if we were still in his office discussing business. Come here. I moved forward on legs that felt disconnected from my body, stopping a few feet from where Vega knelt. The concrete floor around him was stained with what I tried to convince myself wasn't blood. Do you know why we're here? Dante asked me, his voice eerily gentle. No, I whispered. Closure, he said, circling Vega slowly. For both of us. Vega spat blood onto the concrete. You've lost your mind, Dante. Over this waitress? Dante's hand moved so quickly I barely saw it. A sharp backhand that snapped Vega's head to the side. Speak to her with respect, Dante said, his tone unchanged despite the violence of his action. Or don't speak at all. Vega glared up at him, hatred burning through the fear in his eyes. You're breaking every code, every tradition. Your father would be ashamed. My father is dead, Dante replied coldly, because of men like you who put profit above loyalty. He turned to me, his expression softening marginally. Adriana, 12 years ago, this man ordered the death of your father over a gambling debt of $30,000, a debt your father was in the process of repaying. My breath caught. What? Tell her, Dante commanded Vega. Tell her the truth. Vega's jaw clenched, but something in Dante's gaze made him comply. Your father was making payments, he admitted grudgingly. But he was late. I needed to make an example. You needed to prove yourself, Dante cut in, disgust evident in his voice. A small-time enforcer desperate to impress my father. So desperate you ignored his explicit instructions never to harm families. Never to create widows or orphans unnecessarily. He moved to stand behind me, his presence solid and warm at my back. The same night Antonio Vega had your father killed Adriana, he also ordered the hit on my family. 2 birds, 1 stone. Eliminate a debt that was being repaid too slowly, and remove the Russo family so he could take control of our territory. Vega struggled against his bonds, fury contorting his face. That's a lie. I had nothing to do with your family's deaths. For 12 years I believed that, Dante said, his voice deadly calm. Until last month, when certain evidence came to light. Bank transfers, phone records, a deathbed confession from the trigger man himself. My mind was spinning, struggling to process the connections forming. You found this out a month ago. Yes, Dante confirmed. The same week I began making arrangements to bring you into my organization. The timing couldn't be coincidental, so this was about revenge all along, I said, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Using me to get to him. Dante stepped around to face me, his dark eyes intense. No, Adriana. This was about justice. For both of us. And protection. For you, I don't understand. Vega discovered I was investigating him. Dante explained. He began looking into my movements, my interests. He found that I'd been watching you. He would have eliminated you simply for being connected to me, just as he once eliminated your father for a trivial debt. So you... What? Decided to keep me close to protect me? Initially, yes. His gaze never wavered, but that's not why I kept you. Something in his voice made my heart stutter. Vega's bitter laugh interrupted the moment. How touching, he sneered. The mighty Dante Russo, falling for a cocktail waitress. Your enemies will tear you apart when they learn how weak you've become. Dante didn't look at him. They're welcome to try. What happens now? I asked, fear creeping back as I remembered where we were. What was happening? Now you have a choice, Dante said, reaching inside his jacket to withdraw a handgun. He held it out to me, grip first. Justice by your hand, or mercy by your word. Either way, Antonio Vega's fate is yours to decide. I stared at the gun, then at Dante's face, searching for some sign that this was a test. That he didn't actually expect me to make this choice, but his expression remained resolute, expectant. I can't, I whispered, stepping back from the weapon. I'm not a killer. No, Dante agreed, lowering the gun. You're not. That's part of why I... He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face before disappearing behind his mask of control. Please, I said, finding my voice. Don't do this. Not for me. It's not just for you, His eyes hardened as he turned back to Vega. It's for my family, for your father, for every life this man has destroyed pursuing his own ambitions. And what about your soul? I asked desperately. Doesn't killing him make you just like him? Dante smiled slightly, a sad twist of his lips. My soul was compromised long ago, Adriana. But yours doesn't have to be. He studied me for a long moment. If you truly want him spared, I'll respect your wishes. But understand what that means. He'll be exiled, not freed, never allowed to return, never allowed near you or your mother again. Relief washed through me, followed quickly by suspicion. Had this been his plan all along? To offer me this choice, knowing what I would choose, to appear merciful while still getting what he wanted? Why give me this decision? I asked. Why not just do what you've clearly already decided to do? Because you deserve closure, he said simply. And because I needed to see if you could show mercy to the man who destroyed your family. It tells me more about you than any surveillance ever could. The calculation behind his words should have chilled me, but instead I felt a strange sort of wonder. Every move in Dante's world was strategic, layers within layers. Even this moment of apparent vulnerability was serving multiple purposes. I choose mercy, I said firmly. Let him live with what he's done. Dante nodded once, then turned to Giovanni and Marco, who had been standing silently by the door. Take him to the airfield. The arrangements are already in place. As they hauled Vega to his feet, he lunged forward suddenly, his face contorted with rage. This isn't over, Russo. You think you've won, but you've just painted a target on your back, and hers. Dante's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flashed in his eyes. He stepped close to Vega, speaking too quietly for me to hear. Whatever he said drained the color from Vega's face. He went limp between Giovanni and Marco, suddenly compliant as they led him away. When the door closed behind them, Dante and I were left alone in the cavernous space. He tucked the gun back into his jacket and turned to me, his expression unreadable. Are you afraid of me now? He asked quietly. I considered the question honestly. I don't know what I feel. That's fair. He gestured toward the exit. Shall we go? In the car, he sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth but not touching. The silence between us stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, I broke it. Was any of it real? I asked. Anything you told me about why you chose me? He turned to look at me, his eyes softening. All of it was real, Adriana. Yes, I discovered the connection between us because I was investigating Vega. But everything I said about why I chose you was true. Your intelligence, your resilience, your loyalty. But you manipulated me, used my mother's illness, my desperate situation. I gave you what you needed, he corrected gently. And in return, you're giving me what I need. Which is? Someone I can trust. He held my gaze. Someone who sees the truth of me and doesn't run. How do you know I won't run, now that Vega is gone, now that my mother is receiving treatment? What's to stop me from walking away? His smile was sad. Nothing. If you choose to leave, I won't stop you. Your mother's treatment will continue regardless. The position I've offered you will remain open, but the choice is yours, as it always has been. I stared at him in disbelief. You're saying I can just go? If that's what you want. He looked away, gazing out at the city passing by. Though I hope you'll stay. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. There was vulnerability there, real emotion beneath the controlled exterior. Or perhaps that too was calculated. Another layer of manipulation. Why would you want me to stay, knowing I've seen this side of you? He was quiet for a moment. Because you've seen this side of me and you're still here. Still asking questions instead of cowering in fear. Still challenging me instead of simply obeying. He turned back to me. Do you know how rare that is in my world, Adriana? To be seen as I truly am? The raw honesty in his expression made something shift inside me. This wasn't the calculated crime boss or the smooth businessman. This was just a man. Damaged, dangerous, but human. I need time, I said finally. To process everything, to decide what I want, of course. He nodded once, decisive. Take all the time you need. Your apartment below the penthouse is ready. You can stay there while you consider your options. We rode the rest of the way in silence, But it was different now, less tense, more contemplative. When we reached the building, Dante escorted me to the elevator but didn't get in with me. "I'll be away for a few days," he said. "Settling matters related to Vega's departure. Use this time to think, to visit your mother, to decide your path forward, and if I'm gone when you return," something flickered in his eyes, pain perhaps, "then I'll have my answer." The elevator doors closed on his inscrutable expression, carrying me up to my new temporary home. Another gilded cage, but one whose door now stood mysteriously open. The apartment was stunning, smaller than Dante's penthouse, but designed with the same elegant minimalism. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city spread below, lights beginning to twinkle as evening descended. My belongings had been arranged with care, making the space feel oddly personal despite its luxury. On the kitchen counter, I found a note in Dante's precise handwriting. "The refrigerator is stocked. The security desk has a car available for your use. Your mother is expecting you tomorrow at 2 p.m. D." Still orchestrating my life, even in his absence. The thought should have angered me, but instead I felt a strange sort of comfort in his attention to detail. I spent that night and the next wandering through the apartment, thinking through my options. I visited my mother, finding her stronger still, almost like her old self. When I tentatively broached the possibility of leaving Dante's employment, her response surprised me. "Are you afraid of him?" she asked directly. "No," I admitted after consideration. "Not for myself, anyway. Is the work itself something you object to?" I thought about the businesses I'd seen. Legitimate operations. Impressively run. "Not what I've seen so far. Then what's holding you back, honey?" I struggled to articulate it. The world he lives in. The things he's capable of. The way he's manipulated events. My life, to serve his purposes. She took my hand, her eyes wise with experience. "The most dangerous man is the one who doesn't recognize his own power. Dante Russo knows exactly what he is. There's a certain safety in that honesty. You're saying I should stay? Work for the family connected to Dad's death? I'm saying you should make your choice based on the man Dante is now, not the legacy he inherited." She squeezed my hand. "And maybe consider that manipulation isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's protection, seen from a different angle." Her words stayed with me through the next 2 days as I wandered the city, visited her again, and spent nights staring out at the skyline from my temporary home. On the 3rd day, I made my decision. When Dante returned that evening, I was waiting in his penthouse, seated in the living room with the city lights spread behind me. Giovanni had let me in without comment, as if he'd been expecting me. Dante paused when he saw me, surprise briefly crossing his features before his composure returned. He looked tired, the customary perfection of his appearance slightly frayed at the edges. "Adriana," he said simply, removing his jacket and loosening his tie. "You're still here." "I'm still here," I confirmed, watching him carefully. He moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink. "Would you like one?" I nodded, and he brought me a glass of the same amber liquid he drank. I took a sip, the burn of expensive whiskey warming my throat. "Have you reached a decision?" he asked, settling into the chair opposite me. "Yes." I met his gaze directly. "I want to stay, to continue learning, working for you." Relief flickered across his face, quickly masked. "May I ask why?" I considered my answer carefully. "Because you offered me a choice when you didn't have to. Because you respected my decision about Vega. Because..." I paused, gathering courage. "Because I want to understand you, all of you. Not just the businessman or the crime boss, but the man underneath." Something shifted in his expression. A softening, a vulnerability I'd glimpsed only in fragments before. "Understanding goes both ways, Adriana." "I know." I set my glass down, leaning forward slightly. "I'm not naive. I know what I'm choosing. I know who you are, or at least I'm beginning to, and I'm still here." He studied me for a long moment, as if memorizing my features. "There will be difficulties, dangers. My world isn't kind to perceived weaknesses." "I'm not your weakness," I said firmly, echoing his words from days ago. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "No, you're not." He rose, moving to stand at the window, his back to me. "There's something else you should know before you fully commit to this path." I waited, sensing the weight of whatever he was about to share. "Your father," he said finally. "His death wasn't just Vega's decision. It was approved by someone in my family." My breath caught. Who? My uncle, the one who took control after my father and brothers were killed. He turned to face me, his expression grave. "He's dead now, by my hand, when I discovered his betrayal 3 years ago. But I thought you should know the full truth. The revelation should have shocked me, but somehow it felt like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place." "Why tell me this now? Because if we're to move forward, in whatever capacity, there can be no secrets between us. No manipulations. Not anymore." I rose, moving to stand before him. "Thank you for the truth." His eyes searched mine, looking for fear or judgment, and finding none. "You continue to surprise me, Adriana Parker." "Good," I said simply. "I intend to keep doing that." Something shifted between us then. An understanding, an alignment. Whatever happened next, we would face it together, both of us changed by the truths we'd shared. 6 months passed in a blur of learning and transformation. I absorbed the intricacies of Dante's empire, the legitimate businesses, and, gradually, the shadows behind them. I accompanied him to meetings, events, negotiations. I learned to read the subtle shifts in his expressions, to anticipate his needs before he voiced them, to represent his interests when he wasn't present. My mother's health improved steadily under Dr. Marino's care. By the 4th month, she was strong enough to move into a comfortable apartment Dante provided near the treatment facility. I visited her weekly, no longer afraid to speak freely about my work, my life, the man who had irrevocably changed both. "He looks at you differently now," she observed one afternoon as we shared tea on her balcony. "How so?" I asked, though I knew what she meant. "Like a man who's found something he thought he'd never have." She studied me over the rim of her cup. "And you look at him the same way." I couldn't deny it. Somewhere amid the danger and intensity of Dante's world, amid the shared confidences and quiet moments, something had shifted between us. Not spoken yet, but present in every interaction. A current of possibility, of connection deeper than employer and employee. On the night marking my 6th month in Dante's service, he invited me to dinner at his cliffside home. Mrs. Russo greeted me with the warmth of familiarity now, and the security team nodded respectfully as I passed. I was no longer an outsider, but part of Dante's inner circle. Trusted, valued, protected. After dinner, we walked on the terrace overlooking the ocean, the night air cool against my skin. Dante was quieter than usual, a tension in his shoulders I'd learned to recognize. "What's wrong?" I asked directly. He smiled slightly. "Your perception continues to improve." "You're avoiding the question." He stopped at the terrace railing, looking out at the dark water below. "I received information today about a potential threat, a coalition forming against me, led by former associates of Vega." Fear tightened my chest. "Against you, or against us?" He turned to me, surprise evident in his expression. "Us?" "Your organization, your people." I held his gaze. "Me, all of the above," he admitted, "but primarily targeting what they perceive as my greatest vulnerability." "Me," I said again, understanding dawning. "Yes." His jaw tightened. "They believe that through you, they can control me, hurt me." "Can they?" The question hung between us, heavy with implication. Dante stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "Yes," he said softly, the admission clearly costing him. "They can." I should have been frightened by the confession. Instead, I felt a strange sense of power, not over him, but with him. Balance in what had once been so unbalanced. "What will you do?" I asked. "What I must, to protect what's mine." His eyes never left mine. "But first, I need to know where you stand. What you want." I understood the real question beneath his words. "I want to stay," I said clearly. "With you. Whatever that means. Whatever it costs." Something fierce and tender crossed his face. He raised a hand to my cheek, his touch gentle despite the strength I knew those hands possessed. "Adriana." My name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "Do you understand what you're saying? The choice you're making?" "Yes." I covered his hand with mine, holding it against my face. I've seen all of you now. The businessman, the crime boss, the orphaned boy who built an empire from ashes. I know who you are, what you're capable of, and I'm still here. The last barrier between us dissolved with those words. He drew me closer, his eyes asking a final question that I answered by closing the distance between us. His lips met mine with surprising gentleness, a contrast to the intensity that vibrated through him. When we parted, his expression was transformed, open in a way I'd never seen before, vulnerable in a way perhaps no one had. I will keep you safe, he promised, his voice low and fierce. Always. I know. I smiled slightly. And I'll keep you human. Understanding passed between us. A bargain. A balance. He would protect me from his world. I would protect him from himself. In the weeks that followed, we moved carefully into this new reality. By day, I remained his assistant, professional and focused. By night, we explored the deepening connection between us, learning each other's histories, fears, desires. The threat Dante had mentioned materialized in small ways at first. Business disruptions, minor betrayals by peripheral associates. We weathered them together, my insights often complementing his experience, my perspective softening his more ruthless impulses. When the direct attack finally came, an attempt on my life as I visited my mother, it was Dante's precautions that saved me. The would-be assassins never made it past the security team that had been shadowing me, invisible but ever-present that night, as I lay in Dante's arms in his penthouse, the city lights casting patterns across the ceiling. He made a decision. We need to end this, he said, his voice hard with resolve. Permanently. How? He outlined his plan, a strategic dismantling of the coalition against him, a series of moves that would eliminate the threat without sparking a war. Calculated, precise, ruthless. And you want my help? I guessed, reading the unspoken request in his eyes. Yes. His honesty was absolute now. Your insight, your perception, your restraint. I understood what he was asking. Not just my assistance, but my conscience. My humanity as a counterweight to his more brutal instincts. I won't become what they are, I said firmly. And I won't let you become that either. Relief softened his features. That's exactly why I need you. Over the next month, we executed the plan together. Where Dante would have struck with overwhelming force, I suggested more subtle approaches. Where I would have shown mercy, he insisted on necessary firmness. Together we found a balance. Justice without cruelty, power without corruption. When it was done, the threat neutralized, the coalition scattered. Dante took me back to his cliffside home. In the library where he had once shown me his beginnings, he knelt before me, taking my hands in his. Marry me, he said simply. No preamble, no flowery speech, just the directness that was so essentially him. Are you sure? I asked, searching his face. Your world is safer with you in it, he finished. Stronger with you beside me, better because of you. I thought of the journey that had brought us here, from cocktail waitress and shadowy boss to partners in every sense. I thought of my mother's words about the honesty of a man who knows his own power. I thought of the balance we'd found together, his darkness tempered by my light, my softness protected by his strength. Yes, I said, the decision feeling like coming home. Yes. The relief and joy that transformed his face made him look younger, unburdened. He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if I might disappear. I love you, he said against my hair, the first time he'd spoken the words. More than I thought possible. I love you too, I whispered back. All of you. 1 year to the day after I first entered Dante's office at Obsidian, we were married in a private ceremony at the cliffside house. My mother, fully recovered and radiant, walked me down the aisle. Dante's loyal inner circle stood witness: Giovanni, Marco, Uncle Sal, Mrs. Russo, alongside my few true friends. As we exchanged vows overlooking the ocean where we'd first acknowledged the truth between us, I reflected on the strange path that had led us here. From a desperate cocktail waitress, unaware of being watched, to the wife and partner of the most powerful man in the city. From a vulnerable girl seeking to save her mother to a woman who had found her own strength. Dante's eyes held mine as he slipped the ring onto my finger, his voice steady with conviction. Where you go, I go. Your enemies are my enemies. Your joy is my joy. Your pain is my pain. From this day until my last. Not traditional vows, but ones that spoke to the reality of our world, the dangers we faced together, the protection we offered each other, the balance we maintained between darkness and light. Where you go, I repeated, meaning every word. Your strength is my strength, your burden is my burden, your heart is my heart, from this day until my last. As his lips met mine, sealing our promise, I knew we had both found something we never expected. Redemption in the most unlikely place, love born from the ashes of vengeance, and a future neither of us had dared to imagine. Together, the man who had once watched me from the shadows now stood beside me in the light. And I, who had once been invisible to the powerful world around me, now helped shape it with compassion and courage. We were not perfect. Dante would always carry darkness within him, and I would always struggle with the moral complexities of his world, but together, we had found balance. Protection without possession, power tempered by mercy, love strong enough to transform us both. And in the end, isn't that what justice truly looks like? Not revenge or retribution, but transformation. The chance to become more than our histories, better than our circumstances, stronger through our union. As we faced our future together, Dante Russo and his unlikely bride, we carried that truth forward into whatever awaited us, that love, when chosen with open eyes and whole hearts, can redeem even the darkest pasts and illuminate the most uncertain futures. Not an ending, but a beginning, our beginning,